Hello, I'm Will.
And I'm Caleb.
And welcome to the UA Chi Alpha podcast. Today we're going to be reading about the prophet Elijah. So grab your Bible and come join us. Caleb, tell me how you got connected to Chi Alpha.
Well, it was my junior year of college. I was actually hanging out with a group of friends, and I had a buddy that I had grown up playing soccer with come up to us. I had no idea he was at the school, and he came up to us and just began sharing his testimony with us of how Jesus had changed his life. And I had grown up going to church, and I really didn't have a relationship with Jesus. He was just, I guess, just name only for me. But something about my friend really stuck out in his testimony. And I was like, well, if the Lord can change him, then maybe he has something for me. And so he invited us to his small group. And from there, I just got plugged into Chi Alpha, and the rest is history. So.
That's awesome, man. Yeah. Do you have any hidden or special talents that you want the whole world to know about?
I do have one. Not sure how much of a hidden talent it is, but I can fold my tongue. Not like in the folding like that, but okay. I can.
I gotcha. Can you do that? I know I can't. I can't even do the normal like fold it in half this way. So it's a good hidden talent. So.
Yeah, I think I learned that from a cousin of mine who's like 8 years younger than me. So
nice. That's good.
Yeah,
that's good stuff. Speaking of like being younger, I remember. This was back for me when I was in the 4th grade. So I remember I was taking a test. We were just doing some type of assignment. I don't know, maybe that wasn't a test, but it was just this assignment that I knew it was going to be graded. And it was something to do with like grammar or whatever. But I remember as I was taking this, like feeling super confident in every answer I put down on the paper. I was like, I know that one. Okay, I know how to do this. Yep, do this right here. And like I felt super confident, right? And then we moved on to the next thing while the teacher was grading everything, and I'm just minding my business. And then that paper gets slipped back to me. Guess what was on that paper?
Hopefully not a bad grade.
Oh, my friend, it was a bad grade. It was my first bad grade.
Man, it's the worst.
And what do you think my reaction was?
Not a good one.
Yeah, I bawled.
Yeah,
I cried.
Yeah, I'm sure that's what I would have done too.
And I remember that so distinctly. It wasn't like an F; it was a D. Like my first bad grade was a D, and I remember staring at that D, that red D on that paper, and I was just like, no way, it couldn't be. And I viscerally rejected it because I felt like it was like, you are this D. And like, even a 4th grader, like how old are 4th graders? Like 10 years old or whatever, like I had tied up so much identity and understanding of like who I was. And like, there was so much more that this D meant. It wasn't just, I didn't know that material very well.
Yeah.
Like I didn't receive it that way. I received it much more deeper. Like it hit something much more deeper inside of me. That like, why did this grade matter so much to me?
Yeah.
Why did it carry so much weight? Even as a 4th grader, and I think we all have that moment, right, where you got that first bad grade. You got and it reveals something about how much weight that was there. And how much I had invested a sense of like identity and importance from doing well, like achieving and succeeding, like meant so much to me. And like, I really had derived a lot of sense of security and identity from it. And looking back on it now, I can see clearly how that was really an idol. Like succeeding and achieving was something that I idolized. It was something that I'd worshipped. I'd given great weight to, and here it wasn't showing up.
Yeah.
It was causing great distress.
Yeah.
You know, how about for you? Like, is there anything you can think back on in your life and I say, oh, that's an idol?
Yeah, definitely. I think for me, one of the biggest idols was really of myself. I really idolized how I looked, how I performed. Performance was probably the biggest idol I had in my life. And just like you, I can think of one instance when I was younger. I grew up playing lots of sports. Main sport was soccer. And I remember trying so hard to perform well for my dad, for my coach, for my teammates. And anytime that I messed up, it was kind of like how you respond with your grade. I don't know if I cried, but I definitely just grew more and more angry at myself. And I think that's probably the biggest example I can think of as far as something that I really idolized myself. And that's a hard thing to live up to, especially how faulty I was. Trying to be the best at something, I quickly saw often how I wasn't the best at that thing. And so that was definitely a big part of my life growing up. And even still today, I can struggle with how am I doing? How am I, performing and whatnot, and really find identity in that stuff. And whenever I fail at it, it just comes crashing down on me. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think we can really recognize that and resonate with that, right? That we give a lot of weight to things, and anything where we're finding significance or fulfillment or security, like when we're trying to find that in something other than God, my friend, you have an idol.
Yeah.
And that worship is something that is intrinsic to us. Like worship flows out of us like water flowing through a river. It just happens. Like we can't help but do it because it's how we're made.
Yeah.
That God made us in his image. He made us for relationship, for connection, for family, for communion, and to give worship rightly to God. But there's a problem. We've been misdirecting that worship. We've been giving it to everything and everyone else but God.
Yeah.
And there's so much wreckage around because of that.
Yeah.
And so what is idolatry? It is simply just our misplaced worship, and that's the problem, that we have misplaced worship. But God has not left us in that place. That whenever we recognize we have misdirected our worship, we can redirect that worship back to God because of what Jesus has done for us.
Yeah.
So today we're going to actually read a story from the Bible where God did that. He intervened in a very spectacular way on behalf of his people to redirect their worship back towards himself, away from what was destructive to them and back to himself where it rightly belonged in the first place. So we're going to, with that, turn to the book of 1 Kings in chapter 18. So please grab your Bible and join us right here. So to set the scene a little bit here, we have now, we're a few kings outside of like King David and Solomon, they're a little more historical figures now. The kingdom has been split into that was one kingdom under David has now, because of Israel's sin, has become two. There's the kingdom in Israel, which is in the north, and then there's the kingdom of Judah, which is in the south. And our story today takes place in the north, in the kingdom of Israel. And so there's this king named Ahab who ascends to the throne. And once he becomes king, he marries this woman named Jezebel, who is from the land of Canaan, and she brings Ahab into worship of her god, Baal. And so Ahab then begins to create temples for Baal, create sacrifices, and then God raises up Elijah. And he raises up a prophet, and a prophet is now is in the book of Kings. Like it could also be the book of prophets versus kings, because there's this kings that are like going wayward, and then God raising up prophets to try to bring the people back into covenant, back into relationship. And so Elijah is one of the more well-known prophets that God raises up. And so Elijah calls for a drought. And that's what's happening, that for years, there's no water, there's no rain. And what happens when it doesn't rain, Caleb?
Everything dries up.
Everything dries up, right? Crops fail.
Yeah.
There's no food in the land. And so by the time that this story that we're about to read comes on the scene, it's dire straits for the people. Like, there's been no rain for years. There's no food. That even before Ahab was like, I need to feed a little bit of surviving animals, horses that I have left, like he's really hurt because of this famine and drought that is in the land and stuff. So we're going to then begin reading in 18 verse 16 through 21. I'll read for us here.
Sure.
So Obadiah went to meet Ahab and told him, and Ahab went to meet Elijah. When he saw Elijah, he said to him, "Is that you troubler of Israel?" And he says, "I have not made trouble for Israel," Elijah replied, "but you and your father's family have. You have abandoned the Lord's command and have followed the Baals. Now summon the people from all over Israel to meet me on Mount Carmel, and bring the 450 prophets of Baal and the 450 prophets of Asherah who eat at Jezebel's table." So Ahab sent word throughout all Israel and assembled the prophets on Mount Carmel. Elijah went before the people and said, "How long will you waver between two opinions? If the Lord is God, follow him. If Baal is God, follow him." Yeah, and so Israel is committed to following Baal. And so Baal is kind of this like, well, that's an interesting name. Like, who is this idol? And so Baal was a Canaanite deity who was supposedly in charge of the rain and in charge of fertility. That, that if you so why might Israel then be worshiping Baal? Why do you think they would be worshiping this guy?
It hasn't rained in the last 3 years, so trying to get a little rain.
Okay, yeah. And so you see the connection there, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's not an accident that the Lord told Elijah, pray that there won't be rain on the land.
Yeah.
Right? Of all things you could pray, it's specifically a dunk on Baal.
Yeah.
It's like it's meant to like be a dunk on this idol, this empty thing. He's like, yeah, it will be no rain. This is supposed to be the God of rain. There ain't no rain because there ain't no God that is the God of rain.
Come on, God.
And so the people were worshiping Baal because if they worshiped him, then that would bring the rain, which would bring the crop, which would bring the money, which would bring the security. Right?
Yeah.
See that chain of events there?
Yeah, definitely.
And so that's what motivated the people. Like, okay, like we got Yahweh, we're the people of Yahweh, we're the people of God, right? But let's just hedge our bets, let's also worship this deity too. And we got all our bases covered, man,
Yeah.
Like that's exactly what's happening here. And when Elijah's like, how long will you waver between two opinions? Like, you can't do both of these. You cannot serve God and Baal. It's either one or the other.
Yeah.
Either one of these gods is legit or the other is a phony.
Yeah.
And so it's setting up for a cage match here, man. It's going to be good.
Let's go.
Can you read the next portion here for us, Caleb, from 22 to 20? Oh, excuse me. 22 to 26.
Yeah. Then Elijah said to them, "I'm the only one of the Lord's prophets left, but Baal has 450 prophets. Get 2 bulls for us. Let Baal's prophets choose one for themselves and let them cut it into pieces and put it on the wood, but not set fire to it. I'll prepare the other bull and put it on the wood, but not set fire to it. Then you call on the name of your God, and I will call on the name of the Lord. The God who answers by fire, he is God." Then all the people said, "What you say is good." Elijah said to the prophets of Baal, "Choose one of the bulls and prepare it first, since there are so many of you. Call on the name of your God, but do not light the fire." So they took the bull given them and prepared it. Then they called on the name of Baal from morning till noon. Baal, answer us, they shouted. But there was no response. No one answered. And they danced around the altar they had made.
Yeah. So like, picture this scene, you have two altars. There's a calf on one, calf on the other. They have the wood, and then there's like 900 prophets on one side. And then there's one prophet on the other, 450 for Baal and 450 Asherah.
Yeah.
And these guys are shouting, could you imagine 900 people shouting at the top of their lungs, what that would have sounded like,
Yeah.
And like dancing and doing everything that they can to get the attention of Baal. But what happens?
Nothing.
Nothing. Right. And it says there's nothing happened from morning until noon. Like they were doing this for hours.
Yeah.
What do you think was going through the head of these prophets?
I don't even know. Just like, come on, Baal, come on, Asherah. Let's get something going here. Like maybe he's not real.
Okay. So maybe a crisis of faith. Maybe he's not real.
Yeah.
Or just like we haven't done what we need enough yet.
Yeah.
I think it's probably what they're thinking.
Probably
they're
so.
thinking we haven't done enough. We haven't committed enough. We haven't given enough. What we really need to do is you give more. It's not that there's nothing here, it's that we haven't given enough to release the blessing of Baal. And that mentality comes to anything we were doing idle. What I need is just more of this, right? Like what I need is on the other side, just some more alcohol, some more, whatever you want, pornography, some more, more relationships, more anything you think of. Like that's what I need. When there's more, then like I didn't have fulfillment, because I didn't have enough of it.
Yeah.
Not that there was nothing fulfilling about it, but that if only I had a little bit more of it. And so these prophets are still going to keep going. They're still going to keep shouting. And then it says at noon, beginning in verse 27, we'll pick up. It says at noon, Elijah began to taunt them, talking some smack. Shout louder, he said. Surely he is a god. Perhaps he is deep in thought, or busy, or traveling. Maybe he is sleeping and must be awakened. Doesn't really sound like a god.
No.
Those things are happening.
Yeah.
So they shouted louder and slashed themselves with swords and spears, as was their custom, until their blood flowed. Midday passed, and they continued their frantic prophesying until the time for evening, this evening sacrifice, when there was no response, no one answered, no one paid attention. Just incredible. So now it's Elijah's turn, right?
Yeah.
All right. Can you read up for Elijah, beginning in verse 30?
Yeah. Then Elijah said to all the people, "Come here to me." They came to him, and he repaired the altar of the Lord, which had been torn down. Elijah took 12 stones, one for each of the tribes descended from Jacob, to whom the word of the Lord had come, saying, "Your name shall be Israel." With the stones he built an altar in the name of the Lord, and he dug a trench around it, large enough to hold 2 seahs of seed. He arranged the wood, cut the bull into pieces, and laid it on the wood. Then he said to them, "Fill 4 large jars with water and pour it on the offering and on the wood." "Do it again," he said, and they did it again. "Do it a third time," he ordered, and they did it a third time. The water ran down around the altar and even filled the trench. At the time of sacrifice, the prophet Elijah stepped forward and prayed.
Let's stop right there. So,
Okay.
So what had he done right now? What has happened here?
He reset the altar.
Okay.
And he has laid the sacrifice on it and poured a ton of water on it, which you would not do if you're trying to consume it through fire.
Yeah. Soggy wood doesn't burn.
No. Yeah.
That doesn't do that. It's supposed to
Not
do
at
very
all.
well. And so he puts 12 stones, one for each of the tribes of Israel, right? Because this whole thing is about bringing God's people back to God. Like it is meant to show the goodness and faithfulness of their God.
Yeah.
And so he's not making it easy for God. He's like, there's gonna be no doubt. I've doused this wood. Like you can't say, you did a little bit of trick, and then so it just looked like God showed up. Like, no, it's like, if he's going to show up, it's going to be unmistakable.
Yeah.
And so now we'll read his prayer.
At the time of sacrifice, the prophet Elijah stepped forward and prayed, Lord, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Israel, let it be known today that you are God in Israel, and that I am your servant and have done all these things at your command. Answer me, Lord, answer me, so these people will know that you, Lord, are God, and that you are turning their hearts back again. Then the fire of the Lord fell and burned up the sacrifice, the wood, the stones, and the soil, and also licked up the water in the trench.
Dang. That's just what a scene that must have been to see that. You know, it's
Man, I know.
And he's praying like, God, like turn the heart of your people back to you. And then fire consumes everything. All the water is evaporated instantly.
Yeah.
The animal, the stone, the wood, like everything is just in a intense blaze, consumed, and the people free. And it says that, and when the people saw this, they fell prostrate and cried, the Lord, he is God. The Lord, he is God. And Elijah commanded them, seize the prophets of Baal. Don't let anyone get away. They seized them, and Elijah had them brought down to the Kishon Valley and slaughtered them there, because God does not want anything to stand between him and his people and their devotion. And so he brings them back to himself. And so yeah, that the God that shows up, you know, in this fire on Mount Carmel is, and redirect the worship of the people back to him, is also the same God that shows up in Jesus and redirects our worship back to him too. That Jesus, he brings us back to God, that he came so that we would be redirected, that we would be reached and brought back into fellowship and communion with God. And Jesus also, you know, gave an interesting parable. It said that, you know, you cannot serve God and money. You cannot serve two masters.
Yeah.
And I remember like my first mission trip, we went to Nicaragua over our spring break. So it wasn't a very long trip, about a week long. And I remember we did a lot of school programs, and we would load up in the bus early in the morning, and we would go to school after school after school after school, play with the kids. But we would also do just a little skit, and then we would share testimony, and then we would hand the book of life, which was just this kids' Bible that had coloring activities and little things like that for kids. But one of the skits that I really liked was the Two Masters skit. And this was really fun to do. So you just had three people, one master on the left, one master on the right, and then the servant in between. And so one master would start off like, servant, I'd love my newspaper for today. And so they bring him the newspaper, he start reading. Then the other master would say, servant, please come. Like, hey, I need my newspaper. And so this guy runs back, steals the newspaper from the first master, and then gives it to the other. And, you know, the first master's like, what gives?
Yeah.
You know, like, you just gave me this. Like, it doesn't know that there's another master. He just thinks his servant came and stole his newspaper. Then he asks, like, bring me some food. And so, like, he gets some food, he starts eating, and then the other master calls for his food, and he takes it back and gives it. And then calls, okay, well, give me this food back. He gives it back to the other master, and it's like, and it just goes back and forth, and you just get more haggard and ragged as you're back and forth between these two masters. And the end, it's just like, how can I do this? I can't do this. I can't serve God and money. I can't serve God and something else. I can't serve Yahweh and Baal. You know, I can't serve, you know, and the prophet Elijah said, how long will you waver between two opinions? You know, how long will you try to have two masters?
Yeah.
Will you try to have God and have Baal? You know, and Jesus tells his people the same thing. How long will you try to have me or something else? You know, you can only have but one master. There's only be but one direction of our worship. That any other direction is a misdirected worship. And so that was always a really fun skit, because it's just, I think everybody, even when you're doing it, like, you just can't help but connect it and like recognize I see myself in this situation. You know, I see myself here. And while you don't worship Baal, you know, I don't think that's the case. I could be wrong.
Hopefully not.
But there's probably things that like play the role and function of Baal in our life, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So what are some modern day Baals or idols that you can think of, Caleb?
Well, one right off the bat for me would be money. Is something that just comes to mind. This pursuit of more financial gain so that I can be more secure. Something that you had mentioned earlier. Something else that I see a lot of is entertainment.
Yeah.
Being a big one. Entertainment and comfort kind of go hand in hand, I think. But just letting your time be consumed by entertainment and by comfort.
Yeah.
I think another one would be the pursuit of pleasure, sex, pornography, like you had mentioned. So I can see all those being idols in someone's life.
Absolutely. And I think for some, they even try to like, okay, I can have Jesus and this thing, like, okay, I'm a Christian, I'm following Jesus, but I also like my entertainment, or I want to have this, or I also want to be able to call the shots in my life. And so like, I want Jesus, but I also want this other stuff too.
Yeah.
And that's also then that same place where the people of Israel were like, oh, yeah, we're Yahweh's people, but we also have Baal too.
Yeah.
And Elijah's like, no, you can't do that, And so there's ways we can see ourselves doing that. I think some real clear examples. You just identified so many great examples of like the God of success. Do you care more about the A than actually learning something? Like if the letter grade, if the A was the grade, like then actually the learning something new and like discovering something, like if that wasn't something that you valued, you just valued the A, then maybe success was the idol there. That if you find that anxiety and stress are constantly in your life, that's a good indication that success is what you're worshiping, that your identity becomes inextricable from achievement. I am what I do. I am my GPA. And then you have good grades, like have you ever thought, why do you want to get the good grade that you get in your class, right? And, and I think because you get the good grade, right? Because it means you get a good GPA, and a good GPA means you have an attractive resume. An attractive resume means you're going to get a good job, and a good job means you'll get a good salary. But why do you want the good salary? Maybe because there's a sense of security, and that this bad grade threatens that end security. It feels like it's more than just the grade, that there's something else on the line. And we've invested our security not in God, but into our own academic achievement and performance. You can do with athletics too,
Absolutely.
And so that our focus is to be on God's glory. Good grades need to have that kind of motivation. Not to say that, have bad grades. Like, no, like you should want to do well, but for the purpose of glorifying God, not that I can win my own security. Or the God entertainment. You talked about that. And I think that's such a good one, especially now on break, that, you're at home, you're on break. I think the God of entertainment looms large in this time. This is how I can get that Netflix series or multiple Netflix series. We can devote much time and finances to being entertained. And what happens when you ever notice this thing that happens when you like watch something, you get like, let's say a TV show or a series, you ever notice that you just feel so engrossed into the story, right?
Yeah.
Like you like begin to like feel like this is reality in some ways. Like your engagement with it goes beyond almost into an investment. Like I'm invested into the character. I'm invested into the outcome.
Yeah.
And it just pulls us into itself. But the problem is that's not the real world.
Yeah.
Like those people that you fell in love with, they're not real people that can come out and meet you.
Yeah.
They're a figment of someone's mind, like a Baal.
Yeah.
A figment of someone else's mind that you think is real and you get so engrossed in, and that person's not there. That thing isn't there. But there is a story that actually is real. That is the story of redemption. That this is the most awesome, powerful story of a God who made the world out of love and is saving it out of love and has called us and invited us into his work and mission. And this is the most exhilarating. This is the realest real. But instead we want, Mandalorian, and so I think there's more that we can have.
Yeah.
I think the Great God Entertainment needs to be left alone, and video games too. I think I've seen video games really replace hobbies for men.
Yeah.
There used to be a day when a lot of men used to know how to work on cars or have some kind of hobby. There was knowledge and skill and the things they did, or woodworking. They would be able to do things that produce stuff for people.
Yeah.
And what's replaced the hobby and what's replaced real craftsmen and learning has been video games.
Yeah.
Rather than driving a real car, I'm going to play this racing game,
Yeah.
rather than actually going, to the gun range, I'm just going to shoot fake guns on this computer screen, rather than you could really go hunting, or really go practice skeet shooting or something. You can do real things, but no, I'll play this sports game and Madden rather than really play football,
Yeah.
and it just has emptied us and really twisted us.
Yeah, it has.
And so Netflix, football, social media, just so engrossed in it too, especially over break. I think you might find that, man, there was a lot more Netflix than I wanted to, a lot more video game than I wanted to. Then this is the moment where we can just repent. We can just say, Jesus, I repent of this. I own my responsibility of making this wrong choice, and I'm turning around and choosing you. And that's all you have to do. There's no paying it back or anything like that. It's just, I will now begin serving Jesus. I just redirect the worship to where it's always rightfully belonged in the first place.
Yeah.
So how long will you waver between God and something else? How long will you waver between Jesus and entertainment? How long will you waver between Jesus and success? How long will you waver between what is real and what is not? And that all your trouble there lies in the and. See A.W. Tozer in The Pursuit of God, he talked about we want Christ and blank. And he said all our trouble lies in the and. And I think you can recognize some of that trouble that's in your life, and that trouble lies in the and. So surrender the and, get rid of it, repent, move away from that, surrender that, and redirect yourself to Jesus and follow him in committing yourself. Whatever the and is for you today, surrender it and redirect your worship back to Jesus. And you will find that he's been there the whole time, and he is excited to have your attention and focus, and he wants to speak into your life and do great things. So thank you so much for joining myself and Caleb. We've enjoyed reading this really powerful story from the book of 1 Kings with you. Thank you, and please join us next week as we continue to walk through the story of God. Thank you.